When skilled people move across borders but end up doing jobs that don't use their full qualifications, that's called brain waste. In this short video, I'll explain what brain waste is, why it happens in migration, and who it affects, and what can be done about it. Hi, my name is Melissa Siegel. I'm a professor of migration studies, and this is a channel about all things migration. So let's get into it. So, brain waste refers to the underutilization of an individual's skills, education, or professional experience. This can be the case for the local workforce, but it is more prevalent among migrant workers. So, for example, a doctor who trained abroad working as a taxi driver, or a highly qualified engineer employed in some kind of low-skilled service work. Now, why does this happen and what are the main causes? I would say there are about 6 main reasons why we see brain waste occurring, particularly in a migration situation. All right, so the first is credential recognition barriers. So foreign diplomas and licenses often aren't accepted, or the recognition process can be costly and very slow. The second is language and communication gaps. Limited language skills can block professional practice. So for example, take a surgeon maybe from Syria that moves to Germany. It is not possible for that surgeon to actually practice if they cannot communicate with the patient, or maybe more importantly, with the staff around the operating table. So language here is a very important barrier to being able to actually practice medicine. The third is legal and institutional constraints. Now, immigration status, work permits, and licensing rules can restrict access to regulated professions. And we see that in some professions more than others, and it can also depend on the specific country. Now, the fourth is also a lack of networks and information. So having no professional contacts or mentors or guidance to navigate the job market. And that is something that's quite different from what a local experience is in the same context. Another point that can be taken into account here is just economic pressure. So the immediate need for income can often force migrants into sort of any available work, meaning they might not have the time to wait for the recognition of qualifications or go through some of these other processes, but they will just take the first job that enables them to make some money. The sixth area, and one that we definitely know comes into place, is also discrimination and bias. Employers may distrust foreign qualifications or just prefer local experience. And a lot of this just has to do with not being familiar with maybe the country that the person comes from, or that educational market or labor market. So employers are sometimes afraid to take a chance on an immigrant not being as familiar with their skills and education. So who's affected by this? Now, brain waste can affect anyone, but it's more likely to affect recent arrivals, refugees, internationally trained professionals, and even second-generation migrants who may still face hurdles entering specific preferred careers. And at this point, once we get to the second generation, this has a lot more to do with discrimination and bias than it does with the other points I mentioned before. Now, there are a number of consequences of brain waste. So for the person or the individual, it's a loss of income and career progression. It's wasted time and resources spent on redundant or irrelevant work. There can also be psychological harm, maybe a reduction of self-esteem or stress, and a professional identity loss. There can also be an underinvestment in human capital when people stop using or updating their skills, so that we see these skills also start to deteriorate even more. Now, there are also consequences for countries of origin and countries of destination, not just the individuals themselves. So destination countries lose out on skills and productivity and tax revenue when this talent sits idle or is not used up to its full extent. Origin countries can face a mix of impacts, so short-term loss of skilled workers, but also potential long-term gains from remittances and returnees with new skills. With brain waste, it can just weaken these gains because it means that the people are not producing to their full potential. They're also not able to have employment up to their full potential, and then they're not able to gain income and then send remittances up to their full potential. We can also see some real-world examples of this with regard to health systems losing access to foreign-trained nurses because of licensing delays, for example, or IT professionals working in hospitality while their technical skills just atrophy. So this is not good for anyone. And we do have some policy or program solutions that can help to reduce brain waste. We can streamline credential recognition and fast-track assessments, bridge training and provisional licensing for qualified migrants. We can also have language and professional orientation programs tied to industry needs. So this is one of the easiest, I would say, to do. You can also have mentoring, internships, and job placement services to connect migrants with employers. And then, of course, we can have regulatory reform. So harmonizing standards, allow, supervised practice, and removing unnecessary legal barriers. For employers, we can also give incentives like subsidies or tax breaks for hiring internationally trained professionals. Or there can also be support for return mobility and skills portability between countries. So what we can also do that would just be much more efficient, and this is something that employers can do, is assess skills rather than credentials alone. Offer on-the-job training and create, inclusive hiring practices. Community organizations can also run peer mentoring or networking programs. So reducing brain waste is a win-win. It restores dignity and careers for migrants and also makes sure that they can work to their full potential and fill those gaps that are often very much needed in the labor market. So I hope you found this video useful and understand a little bit more about what brain waste is. Of course, if you did find this useful, make sure to give the video a thumbs up. And if you haven't done so already, make sure to like and subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell so you don't miss any of the videos that we upload on a regular basis on this channel. And I do hope to see you next time. Bye-bye.